And welcome back to another live here from the Midwest Pawn Convention. And with me, I have Martin Strasser. Welcome, brother.
Yeah, thank you, Yigal. It's a pleasure to be here, actually. So I'm pretty excited.
So we talked about you this morning earlier when Greg was on. You gave a presentation today, and I know you say that you're not a numbers guy, you're not an accountant, but you really crushed it.
No, thank you.
You did. And for those of you who don't know, Martin he just knows the numbers. He checks all the numbers. You dive in your metrics, and that creates a certain amount of success. And I think it's really important to do in the industry today.
Yeah, I think it's a big part. I mean, obviously, especially as your company grows, your mistakes begin to weigh more against you. I mean, if you're early on, I mean, you can't really afford it early on, so that's important too. But you're making mistakes into hundreds of dollars. But as you grow, if you track something wrong or you're not on top of a KPI or a metric like you teach in your programs, I mean, you're potentially risking thousands of dollars. And there came a point of awareness for me, at least, where I'm like, yeah, I better get on top of this before I really train wreck myself, right? So it's
yeah. And I think a lot of times, in the past years, pawnbrokers had the luxury of just opening the doors, people walking in, gold price going up, and money just being made. And today it's different.
Yeah, and you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, we opened in 1995 at our store, and I mean, we had the luxury of kind of riding through the gold boom for, there's 10 years there where you could lend on something today and it would be worth more tomorrow, literally, right?
Awesome.
So, and now it's a case of, well, the picture's changed a bit. A lot of that merchandise isn't around anymore. Clients have changed. There's more competition. They have ways to, sell things privately and peer-to-peer now. So, it's more important than ever to be on top of your metrics and your marketing like you teach and all of this stuff. So, it's just, you've got to be on it now. It's not easy street anymore.
Yeah. And so just for those of you who don't know, Martin's from Canada. Where in Canada are you from?
Kelowna, British Columbia, West Coast, about 3 and change hours east of Vancouver.
Awesome. So he's joining us here at the Midwest Convention. Thank you for doing that, coming out to speak. And I also want to talk about your thirst for learning. Like, you don't just say that you learn all the time and you're talking with other people. And I think it's one of the best things about coming to a convention like this is meeting others and learning and seeing what they're doing.
Well, absolutely. I mean, there's things you can learn from books, obviously, but there's only things you can really learn from networking or, online or podcasts or, membership in various, like the National Pawn Association or things like that. I mean, it's our industry is niche enough that you can't just get on the internet and find, here's how to run a pawn shop 101 and it's obvious, right? It's kind of a weird thing we do, right?
So, yeah. So I agree with you. So you got to come out and really meet other people who are doing it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And talk to them and see what's going on. I mean, my eyes opened up in your presentation. Some people were just like, I didn't even think about that metric. I didn't even know that existed. I'm not even looking at it. And some people were even not defensive, but they were questioning, like, well, what do you mean? And you're like, well, this is numbers, And just so for those of you who know, you took numbers from like Cash America, you took numbers from First Cash, and then 26 other shops, correct?
Yeah. So what we did is how to nutshell this down into the elevator speech, basically. We reached out to a number of independent pawn operators, and we had a total of 26 separate locations, but it was 16 data points, some multi-store operators, and they gave us financials, which we then compared to find best practices, and then we compared those against the public companies. So we had First Cash and Easy, the U.S. operations, and we took a look at what was driving their profit, how we compared as independents, what we could learn to kind of move forward and build our operations forward, because as an industry, we're under new threat every day. I mean, Facebook Marketplace 2 years ago didn't exist, but now we're sitting in an environment where people can peer sell and cut us out. Yeah. We have, a number of years ago, the gold boom went gold bust. We have struggles with finding employees, so we're constantly having to evolve our model, both at our store and then we share that forward with our industry peers as best as we can, provided we're not, direct competitors anyway, right? So it's
So just kind of to summarize, or maybe like pull out a key point from what you spoke about today. What do you think the biggest mistake that pawn shops are making at the moment, and then what do you think is the biggest upside that they're not looking at?
If I had to nutshell something down, the big data point that we kind of drew out was the relationship between expenses and pawn yield, and I think that there's a lot of stores out there right now where profit is an afterthought. They sell, they write loans, and at the end of the day, whatever's left over, they're like, well, that's the result. And I'm trying to reverse engineer it the other way, where I think, well, if this is the profit you want to achieve, we know this is attainable because we've measured it in other stores. Now let's build our operation to hit that. Because at the end of the day, I don't know what it's like for your audience, but for myself, this is my retirement. It's my ability to pay for my kids' tuition. It's
the audience is you.
Yeah,
It's pawnbrokers from all over the world.
Yeah, so for me, I'm like, well, if my life essentially depends on the thing I'm doing, then I better be on top of it, and I want to run it in a way that generates the most yield for me, right?
Yeah, I agree, and it's something that, like, I'm a third-generation pawnbroker, and a lot of people are thinking like, well, metrics and KPIs, and well, we're in the pawn business. It's not about that. I came from a place where there wasn't metrics and there wasn't KPIs. And running my own business in the time of the gold boom, everything was nice and neat. And now coaching other people and consulting, I've had to take a step back and say, wait a second, you need KPIs. You need planning. You need metrics because the business is totally different. So love what you're doing, brother. Love
thank you so much.
the mindset of how you do it. So congrats.
Well, thank you. I think the one big thing that was illuminating is when we did the independent study, there's probably 25 or 30% of the industry that we run into that are really underperforming their peer group. And, that's a concern. They're one market shift or one set of bad decisions away from possibly, losing out or being insolvent or, and that's frightening to think you can put, 5, 10, 15 years into a business and because you've missed something suddenly not exist.
Yeah.
And that's frightening, right?
Love it. Yeah, no, it's very scary, and at the same time, as pawnbrokers, we have to keep learning something new. What KPI does the guy in Canada have that I don't have? How am I outperforming? So a lot of times at these conventions, people come and they don't want to share about their business, but this is the time to share. Because if you're yielding much lower than your peer group, like you said, well, then you got to figure that out. Like, what am I doing wrong?
Well, and that's exactly it. The struggle is, and it's, people tie their self-esteem to the performance of their store. And, even in the presentation, we see some people that were getting, defensive going, well, no, I'm not attacking you. And you're obviously a very bright person. All I'm doing is giving you some things to think about.
Yeah.
Because really, I want you to do well. The industry's shrinking as it is. So let's get out in front of that, right? So
the most important thing, I think, is to get your ego out of the way, because facts are facts, numbers are numbers, like you said. And if we get our ego out of the way of, I've been doing this for 30 years the same way, I've been doing this for this long the same way, and if you are able to learn one more thing from somebody else, and if you can increase your bottom line by 5%, 8%, well, you leave a bigger legacy. You can live a better life. You can buy the toys that you want to buy. You can stress less, which is what I talk about on the podcast.
Well, I think you've just hit it. Live a better life and stress less. At the end of the day, I'm not in business to make 3%.
Yeah.
I'd like to retire in comfort. I'd like to have that financial buffer that says, look, we're going to be in great shape moving forward. And, I don't want to be sitting here every day, month to month, struggling, do I have the cash to meet payroll? So if these are the tools that will get me there, or if I can engage the services of a consultant or a masterclass leader, these are the steps you take, because this is your life. Take charge of it, right?
Yeah. The last line that you said in your speech, it was epic. You said, and I say this a lot, you said, if you're not doing what you want to do, it's your fault.
Yeah, there's a few other speakers I've heard on the topic, but at the end of the day, no one's in charge of your life but you. If you're not putting it together, no one else is going to do it for you, right? So,
so stop making excuses.
Basically.
If you don't know watches, learn it or hire somebody. If you want to take cars, do it. Hire a mechanic. That's what you said. If you want to take better diamonds, go get a GIA, education. Yeah. But learn more about the business so that you don't shut the door, you don't suffer, and you can just smile and enjoy life.
Well, yeah, we get in our own way sometimes. We go, well, I can't do this because, and I'm like, well, why is that because there? Unless there's some external factor preventing that, it's really just, I'm going to get out there and do it.
Yeah. I want to rewind really quickly.
Sure.
How did you get into the pawn business?
Oddly enough, I have no formal business background. I'm a computer guy. and even that was just a hobby. I did tech support for a guy that owned a pawn shop back in the early 90s. And he came to me and he said, hey, I want to open up another one in a different town. Do you want to manage mine? And I said, well, sure, but I don't know anything about managing a pawn shop. He,
no worries.
Let's put that on hold. However, screw it. They can wait. So
we're live. We're live.
We're live. There is my cell phone, right? So, anyways, like, well, yeah, you don't know how to manage a store, but you do know our software, which is half the battle. And I thought, well, he's not wrong there. So I managed that store for 6 months, and then he offered it to sale for the staff to buy, and we'd kind of closed the deal on a handshake. And then I actually got oddly enough, we went home and I got a fax the next morning, and I looked at it and said, "God better offer, you're fired." So I got fired by fax machine from my original job. So that was awesome. But we'd already, lined up the financing and everything. So I said, well, you know what? Why not start? So we started on our own, and we're here, and he's gone. So that's probably there we go, right? So
you did something right.
Exactly.
So being fired was probably the best thing that happened to you, right? I'm guessing.
Silver linings, right? Every end is a new beginning, right? So
love it. So just want to say thanks to Raul, who's on, Phil Webb for watching, Dallas, all good. You got to come shake my hand, Dallas. Where you at, dude? He's here somewhere. But to Martin, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for doing what you do for the pawn industry. Appreciate you.
Thank you.